Title: The Lie That Took Away My Last Goodbye. The old wooden door creaked before I could knock. It wasn't the sound that froze me, it was her face. My grandmother stood there, thinner than I remembered, but her eyes were sharper than any winter frost. "So now you remember the way home," she said. No greeting, no warmth, just a statement that cut deeper than any accusation. I hadn't seen her in over a year. Life had gotten busy. College classes, research deadlines, and the daily sprint of trying to prove myself in a world that always seemed to think I was too strange, too intense. But I'd made a plan. Come home, reconnect, and especially see Grandpa again. He was the only one who ever seemed to get me. "Grandma," my voice trembled. "They told me you were both in a nursing home. They said, 'Don't.'" She cut in, raising a trembling hand to her chest like she was holding back something far heavier than anger. "He called you again and again before he passed. He kept asking, 'Where's Lily?' You were the one he loved most, and where were you?" I felt the weight of those words crash into my chest. Air became a luxury. My thoughts scrambled. "Can I see the number he called?" I asked, my voice barely audible. She didn't answer, just turned and walked inside. A few minutes later, she returned with a worn notebook, flipping slowly to the final page. Grandpa's handwriting stared up at me. Those familiar slanted numbers. But the phone number wasn't mine. "I've had the same number since I was 16, I whispered. Her expression shifted, slow and painful, as if her whole reality had just cracked. "Your parents said you changed it when you went off to college, that you didn't want contact, that we embarrassed you." I sank onto the porch steps, feeling the cold seep through my jeans. Even the breeze across my shoulders wasn't as chilling as what I'd just heard. "Grandma, I came home last summer. I wanted to surprise you." Ashley opened the door. "She told me no one was home. She said you'd moved to a nursing home." Grandma's face went pale. "What nursing home? We've never left this house." Everything stopped. The lie was unraveling, but it didn't make the betrayal any less cruel. "And Grandpa's funeral?" I asked. "They said it was today. At 2 p.m., I arrived at 1:30. The church was empty." She lowered herself into a wooden chair, the one Grandpa used to nap in after lunch. "The service was at 10 a.m. Your mother stood in front of everyone and told them you didn't care enough to come, that you never called. Ashley cried, said she tried to reach you and you just ignored it all. I couldn't breathe. He died believing I didn't care." My hands trembled as I reached for the tea she offered, but I couldn't feel the warmth. My mind drifted back to that day last year. I'd bought a bus ticket home for spring break. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted to see Grandpa's face light up. I even brought his favorite ginger cookies with pistachios in the center, the kind he used to say were just the right kind of weird. But Ashley had answered the door, standing there in a pricey sweater, her expression unreadable. "They don't live here anymore," she said. "They're in a nursing home down in Edgefield. Haven't you been paying attention?" I asked for the address. She didn't have it. I asked for the name. She shrugged. I called Mom. She picked up after a few rings. "Lily, they needed special care. I was going to tell you, but you've been so busy with school. I didn't want to stress you out." The words felt like smoke, seeping through the cracks of everything I believed was solid. I didn't know if I was being protected or erased. Still, I tried. I called a few more times. I sent messages. No reply. Then came the final blow. The phone call that Grandpa had passed. "Funeral's Thursday at 2, Mom said. Her voice was flat. No sorrow, just logistics. I got on the first bus I could. Wore the only black dress I owned. Arrived early. But the church was empty except for a janitor. That service? Ended at 10, ma'am, I called her. You told me to. I said 10, she insisted. You must have written it down wrong. Then Dad got on the line. Either way, your grandmother is very upset. You should go back to school. They made it sound like I'd failed, like I had abandoned the one man who had always made me feel like I mattered. But standing in that kitchen again, breathing in the faint scent of cinnamon and memories, I knew better. Grandpa hadn't forgotten me. He'd tried to reach me, and they made sure he couldn't. That night, as I sat across from Grandma, her eyes still wet from truths too long buried, she reached for her phone and made a call I will never forget. Diane, I need you to come here. Bring Stephen and Ashley too. Right now. It's about his will. It wasn't revenge she sought. It was truth. And when it came, it would split this family wide open, because no matter how far lies travel, the truth eventually finds its way home. And I was finally home. Title: The Day My Grandmother Opened the Door, and the Truth Followed. The kitchen was still the same. That familiar scent of worn wood and distant cinnamon clung to the air like it had never left. I sat in the same chair I used to wobble in as a child, the one Grandpa tightened every spring when it started creaking. Now, only the pendulum clock dared break the silence, ticking away the seconds until the past would catch up with the present. Grandma stood by the stove, her shoulders stiff, her hands clenched around the handle of the old copper kettle. She'd always been graceful, even when tired, but now, the weight of what she had just heard, the truth about the phone calls, the lies, the funeral, settled on her like heavy snow, and I could feel it pressing on me, too. When the water boiled, she made us both a cup of tea, hers with honey, mine plain. She slid the mug in front of me, but my fingers wrapped around it more for comfort than warmth. I couldn't drink. Not yet. Why? I asked. My voice barely rose above the hum of the refrigerator. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she reached into the drawer beside the stove and pulled out a notebook, the same one she'd used to log Grandpa's appointments, grocery lists, and birthdays. She flipped to a page and laid it flat. It was Grandpa's handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before he passed. Names, dates, notes, and my number, my real number. He never stopped trying, she said softly. He called you 5 times that last week. When he couldn't get through, he cried. Lily, that man, he cried, asking what he'd done wrong. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. Then her voice hardened. Your mother told me you changed your number, that you didn't want to be reminded of who you came from. I believed her. God help me, I believed her. I stared down at the mug, the steam now gone. I wanted to cry, but my body had passed the point of breaking. All that was left inside me was a tight coil of grief and disbelief. She lied, I whispered. They all did. I came back to see you. I knocked on this door. Ashley told me this house was empty, that you and Grandpa had been moved to a nursing home in Edgefield. Her head snapped up. Edgefield? I nodded. She wouldn't give me a name, said you didn't want to see anyone. Said Grandpa's mind was fading. Her jaw clenched. We've never left this house, not even once. Your grandfather was in better shape than your uncle last time we saw the doctor. Silence sat down beside us, thick and heavy. After what felt like hours, Grandma stood and walked over to the old landline phone still plugged into the wall. She dialed slowly, deliberately. Diane, I need you to come here. Bring Stephen and Ashley. No, not later. Today. It's about Henry's will. Her tone was sharp. She didn't wait for a reply. When she hung up, she turned to me. They'll be here in an hour. I want you to stay in the kitchen until I call you. No matter what you hear, stay seated. I nodded, but my mind was already racing. The word will echoed in my thoughts like a storm warning siren. Grandpa's will. Whatever he left behind, he must have known. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he'd seen the cracks forming in our family and laid down a blueprint for truth. Maybe he couldn't protect me in life, but in death, he would speak. Time moved like molasses. I stared at the second hand on the clock like it could speed things up if I wished hard enough. When the knock finally came at 4:03 p.m., I jumped. Grandma met them at the door. I couldn't see them, but I knew every voice. "Mom, what's the rush?" my mother's voice said, light and dismissive. "I had an appointment at the stylist," Ashley added with a note of entitlement. "This better not be about Lily." I could practically hear Grandma raising her eyebrow. "Sit down," she said firmly. "Mr. Whitman is here to read Henry's will." That name hit me like ice water. Mr. Whitman, the family lawyer, the one who'd drawn up every estate plan, property transfer, and hospital directive since I was a kid. I heard the distinct click of a briefcase unlocking. "This is the last will and testament of Mr. Henry Carter," Mr. Whitman began, his voice calm and official. "Dated 3 months ago and witnessed according to state law. Per his instructions, this reading requires the presence of Diane Carter, Stephen Carter, Ashley Carter, and Lily Carter." My name echoed through the kitchen like a shot fired in a quiet room. "What?" my mother said sharply. "Lily? She's not even here." I stood then. I opened the kitchen door and stepped into the room where I had once celebrated my 6th birthday with paper hats and chocolate frosting. But this time, no one was smiling. Ashley's jaw dropped. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed on the hardwood floor with a soft thud. My dad stared like he'd seen a ghost. And my mother, ever the performer, recovered fast. "Lily," she said with a tight-lipped smile. "You're here." I looked at Mr. Whitman. "Grandpa wanted all of us present. I'm here now. Please continue." He nodded and read the will. The house went to Grandma. That was expected. But then, Henry Carter hereby transfers full ownership and operational rights of the Carter Innovation Lab research facility to his granddaughter, Lily Carter. The room turned cold. Ashley's chair screeched as she pushed back and stood up. "What? You're leaving a multi-million-dollar center to her?" Mr. Whitman continued as if she hadn't spoken. "The remaining assets, including savings accounts and company shares, are to be split equally between Ashley Carter and Lily Carter." I said nothing. Not because I had nothing to say, but because for the first time I didn't need to defend myself. Grandpa already had, but the best was yet to come. Grandma reached into the drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. "There's a letter," she said. "Henry wrote it before he passed. He asked that it be read aloud." She handed it to Mr. Whitman, and when he opened it, the truth finally entered the room like sunlight pouring through a crack in a locked door. Title: The Will That Spoke Louder Than Silence. The moment Mr. Whitman unfolded the letter, time seemed to slow. The pages crackled faintly under his fingers as he adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. I stood in the living room, surrounded by faces that once made up my world, now just shadows of a truth I never asked to carry. My heart pounded in my chest like a judge's gavel, echoing the rhythm of justice long delayed. "This letter," Mr. Whitman began, "was written by Mr. Henry Carter, dated 1 week before his passing. It is to be read in full, without omission." He looked up at me, then at Grandma, who gave a firm nod. Then he began. "If Lily is present when this will is read, it means the truth has finally reached the one who deserves to know it. I'm sorry I couldn't shield you better, sweetheart, but you were always the light in my world, and I had no doubt you'd find your way back to it." The room fell deathly silent. No one dared breathe. To Margaret, my beloved wife, you stood by me in silence when others tried to dim her brilliance. I saw the hurt in your eyes every time Diane dismissed Lily's questions or Stephen rolled his eyes at her enthusiasm. You held the line when I no longer could. I glanced at Grandma. Her hands trembled slightly, but her gaze remained locked on Mr. Whitman, fierce, unwavering. To the others in this room, I ask you to listen without defense, without excuses. I love both of my granddaughters, but I am not blind. Lily is exceptional. And for that, she was punished. My mother's lips parted, perhaps to object, but no words came out. At 8, she asked me about cell membranes. At 9, she built a coin cleaner out of lemons and wire. But instead of being celebrated, she was treated like a stranger. Diane, you called her a weirdo. Stephen, you laughed. Ashley, you mimicked concern while mocking her behind closed doors. And I stayed silent too long. Ashley's jaw tightened. My father dropped his gaze. I remember the night she won the state science fair. She came home glowing, medal around her neck. No one asked her how it felt, not a word of praise. That night she cried in the kitchen while you all planned Ashley's dance recital seating chart. And I thought, what kind of home have we become? The walls felt like they were breathing, expanding with every painful memory released from this letter. Lily never asked for more than a place to belong, but instead of support, she received suspicion. Instead of encouragement, silence. And when she left for college, Diane told me she needs to learn humility. No, what she needed was family. My mother turned her face slightly, blinking too quickly. This research center, Carter Innovation Lab, isn't just a gift. It's an apology. It's a declaration that brilliance should be nurtured, not erased. That kindness and honesty matter more than appearances and performance. My legs were trembling, but I stood tall. To Lily, if you're hearing this, know that I never stopped trying to reach you. They told me you changed your number, that you didn't want to talk. I didn't believe it, and I was right. I'm sorry I couldn't hold on longer, but this is yours now. Build something better than what you were given. Mr. Whitman's voice quivered slightly as he folded the letter. No one moved. Then Ashley erupted. This is ridiculous, she snapped, standing up so fast her chair toppled backward. He was sick, confused. You really believe he meant to hand over a multi-million-dollar center to her? She pointed a trembling finger at me. She abandoned him. Everyone knows she didn't even show up to the funeral. I opened my mouth, but Grandma beat me to it. Enough, Ashley, she said, her voice like steel. She didn't abandon him. You all abandoned her. You locked her out, lied to her, and now you can't handle the truth that Henry saw through you. Ashley's face turned red. I did everything Mom told me to. I visited him, took him to appointments, read him the Bible. I worked for this. Grandma's hands curled around the arms of her chair. You did those things for inheritance, not out of love. My mother finally spoke. Lily, be reasonable. You're still in school. You can't run a research center. We could sell it, split the proceeds, use it wisely. I turned to her, calm but resolute. This isn't about money. It never was. It's not for sale. My father, quiet until now, stood slowly. Maybe we should respect Henry's wishes. Grandma rose too. Yes, let's. She took the letter back from Mr. Whitman and looked around the room. Henry wrote this not just for Lily, but for all of us. He wanted us to see ourselves clearly, and maybe it's too late for some of you. No one responded. Mr. Whitman gathered his briefcase and looked toward me. Lily, the legal transfer process will begin tomorrow. The facility is yours. Title, operations, and assets. I nodded. My voice, though shaking, was clear. Thank you. My mother stared at me for a long second. Not angry, just empty. Then, without a word, she walked out. My father followed. Ashley stayed behind for a beat longer, then stormed off, muttering that none of it was fair. And then the house was still again. I turned to Grandma. Can I keep the letter? I asked. She placed it in my hand. He wrote it for you. Keep it close. I held it tightly, as if it could anchor me to the man who had always seen me, even when no one else did. And in that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I felt seen. Title, The Legacy I Built, with my own hands. 5 years later, the house was still quiet, but not empty. The tick of that old pendulum clock in the kitchen still marked time like it always had. But now, it ticked over a life entirely my own. The world I inherited the day Grandpa's letter was read had become something real, something living. I called it Carter Innovation Lab, just like he'd written in his final words, not to honor his name, but to honor his belief in me. Every morning, I walked through the glass doors of that modest but humming 2-story research facility nestled on the east side of town near Lake Alton. Not a towering Silicon Valley tech hub, not a multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical behemoth, just 8,000 square feet of white-painted steel and reinforced glass. A place where young minds worked with steady hands and big dreams just like I once had. When I first stepped inside, the place was empty. Bare shelves, dusty benches, a lonely echo. But I brought it to life. One grant application, one refurbished microscope, one secondhand centrifuge at a time. I hired people like me, not Ivy League graduates with spotless GPAs and 5 letters after their names, but people with hunger, with raw potential, and often with rejection letters still fresh in their drawers. Miguel, a software engineer from Oregon who designed the automated sample tracking system. Sarah, my lab partner from college, who could code in 3 languages and once built a bacteria mapping tool in a single weekend. And Leo, an environmental chemist whose autism had cost him 3 job interviews before I met him. We didn't just build a lab, we built a mission to create a place where brilliance wasn't dimmed by pedigree. Every Friday, we hosted fail fairs. That's what we called them, not review meetings, not quarterly updates, just a space where each of us shared what hadn't worked and why it mattered. No shame, no punishment, only growth. And Grandma, she was part of it all. Every week, she came by the lab with muffins tucked in a brown paper bag, banana nut, cranberry orange, or sometimes her science muffins, as she called them, made with chia seeds and whatever vitamin powder she could sneak past the recipe. She didn't sit in the background. She enrolled in a basic science course at the local community college. I don't want to nod politely while you talk about enzymes, she told me. I want to understand what the heck those enzymes are doing. When I stood before the research board to present our findings on waterborne microplastic filtration last fall, she sat in the front row and whispered just before I started, "Talk slower in the first 2 minutes. Let them feel your confidence before they hear it." I smiled then, just like I did at 7 years old wearing safety goggles 2 sizes too big while Grandpa adjusted them for me. That photo, him kneeling beside me, helping me balance a test tube, now hung in my office. I had it framed, under glass, with his handwriting on the back. My little scientist, she's going to change the world. And maybe, in small ways, I already had. This spring, we signed a partnership with 4 public high schools in the county. We donated surplus lab kits, provided summer internships, and invited students from underfunded STEM programs to shadow us for 2 weeks each semester. One of them, a shy junior named Evelyn, sent me a hand-drawn thank you card with a sketch of herself in a lab coat. She wrote, "For the first time, I feel like science has a place for girls like me." That's when I knew. This wasn't just about Grandpa's belief in me, it was about making sure no one else had to fight for permission to be curious. At home, life had found its rhythm too. Grandma and I lived in the same house, the one everyone else had walked away from after that day in the living room. We fixed up the shed in the backyard and turned it into her reading nook. She filled it with floor cushions, a small heater, and a stack of science magazines she claimed only made sense on the second read. We didn't talk about the others much. Each year, I still received a Christmas card from my parents. The front always featured Ashley and her husband, once in front of a ski lodge in Utah, once holding a new puppy, last year posing in front of a leased condo in San Diego. On the back, in Mom's cursive, it always said the same thing: hope one day you understand that family isn't something you choose. But I'd already made my choice. Family isn't just who shares your blood, it's who shares your heart when it's breaking. It's who shows up with a muffin and a lecture note, who believes in your dreams when all the world sees is a weird kid with wires and vinegar. I didn't change my number. I didn't block anyone. I just stopped waiting, stopped explaining, stopped begging to be seen. One Saturday, last month, I was walking back from our satellite station near the lake when I saw two kids crouched by a tree. They were stirring something in a paper cup: mud, twigs, water. One of them looked up and said, "If we add baking soda, it might explode like a volcano." I laughed and walked over. "Need some vinegar?" Their eyes lit up. "I've got some in the lab up the road. Come on." They followed me, wide-eyed, messy, fearless, just like I once was. That evening, as the sun dropped below the fence line, Grandma handed me a cup of tea, still too hot to sip. She said, "You know, I never told you this, but everything you've built, it's because of you." I looked at her, heart full. "No, Grandma, you walked beside me when no one else did." She smiled, and he walked beside us both. I glanced up at the photo on the wall. My little hand in his steady hand on my shoulder. I didn't need a headline or a patent or a eulogy to validate my life. I had something stronger, a purpose built from pain, a legacy forged from love, and the quiet, unshakable truth that I was never too strange to be worthy, just misunderstood. Until now. Title: The Love That Chose Me Back. The older I get, the more I understand that not all scars are meant to fade. Some stay, not to hurt us, but to remind us of what we survived and how far we've come. I used to think I needed my mother's approval to feel whole. That if I achieved just enough, proved myself loud enough, someone in that house would finally say, "We see you. We're proud." But after all this time, after the cards they still send each Christmas with the same hollow line, "Hope one day you understand that family isn't something you choose," I no longer flinch because I did choose, and I chose well. Grandpa may be gone, but his voice never left. I still keep his final letter in a wooden box beside my bed, right next to a worn piece of his old lab coat. Some nights when the pressure of leadership weighs heavier than usual, I unfold it, run my fingers across the ink, the curves of his letters, the strength in his belief. And somehow, I find my footing again. He saw me in a way no one else ever did, not as a burden, not as a misfit, but as someone who mattered. And Grandma, she's still my compass. She's taken to giving speeches at our staff meetings, always brief, always with a story from when Henry and I used to fix broken radios with chewing gum and luck. We all laugh, but when she speaks, people listen. Because there's wisdom in a woman who's watched an entire family fall apart and helped rebuild something stronger from the rubble. One evening this past fall, I came home late from the lab. The air smelled like rain and wood smoke. I found Grandma on the porch swing, wrapped in an old quilt, holding a letter. She handed it to me without a word. It was from Dr. Franklin Hale, Grandpa's best friend from college. The envelope was slightly yellowed, the handwriting shaky, but his words were clear. Henry always knew you'd live a life not meant to please others, but to walk your own path. And if you're reading this, Lily, it means you already are. I cried when I finished it, not out of sadness, but out of something quieter, something that felt like peace. These days, I spend less time proving and more time giving. We launched a community STEM fund in Grandpa's name, supporting under-resourced schools with equipment, teacher training, and scholarships. Every application we receive, every kid who walks through our doors, is a reminder that my story isn't just mine anymore. It's theirs too. It belongs to every child who was told they were too strange. Every girl who loved science more than prom dresses. Every teen who sat in silence at the dinner table because their questions made people uncomfortable. Carter Innovation Lab isn't just a building, it's a second chance. For all of us. And forgiveness? It doesn't live in holiday cards or forced reunions. It lives in small moments, like Grandma leaning over her lab manual, muttering, "So that's what a ribosome does," with a grin. It lives in the laughter of interns, the whir of centrifuges, the quiet power of building something no one can take away. So no, I don't wait for apologies anymore. I don't need closure from those who slammed the door. Because the most powerful truth I've learned is this: I was never too much. I was never not enough. I was exactly who I needed to be, just waiting for the right people to see it. And now that I do, there's no going back. Life lesson. When truth arrives, let it set you free. This story reminds us that truth, no matter how long it takes, will always find its way home. For Lily, it came too late to say goodbye, but just in time to rebuild what mattered. Many of us spend years chasing validation from the wrong people, parents, siblings, authority figures, only to realize that their silence wasn't our failure, but their fear. The lesson? You don't need permission to be worthy. You don't need a title, a perfect resume, or a family that claps when you walk into the room. What you need is belief in your own voice, even when others try to silence it. Lily's journey speaks to anyone who has felt erased, misunderstood, or pushed aside. Her quiet strength didn't come from revenge. It came from purpose. She didn't just survive betrayal, she turned it into legacy. The Carter Innovation Lab wasn't just a lab. It became a space for second chances, a home for the overlooked. So wherever you are in life, starting over, healing, or standing up for yourself, remember this: you are not too strange, too old, or too late. You are exactly right for the story that's still unfolding. And sometimes, the love that finds you later is the kind that never leaves.